tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates. You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates.
Let's switch to suspense. Let's switch to suspense.
You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates. Crime Updates. You are now tuned in to Frankyrose's Crime Updates.
Good day, friends. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Frankyrose's Crime Updates, historical cases. Today, I want to talk about Rogerson. He was a crooked cop from Sydney, Australia, that was exposed by a working girl who was basically trying to get revenge for the murder of her boyfriend. I hope you enjoy the video. Can you please hit subscribe, like, and share while we chat about this notoriously bad cop? So Roger Caleb Rogerson was born on January 3rd, 1941. He was a detective sergeant from the New South Wales Police Force and a convicted murderer. During Rogerson's career, he was one of the most decorated officers on the police force and received about 13 awards for his great policing as well as being devoted to duty. He also received the Peter Mitchell Trophy, which was the highest police award that you could receive. When Rogerson was on the force, he was implicated in, but not convicted of, 2 unalivings, as well as assault, battery, and for dealing drugs. Rogerson is one of 3 children. He grew up in a suburb in Sydney called Bankstown. And from there, he went to Bondi when he was 6 years old. Roger's father, Owen, came from Kingston upon Hull in England to work as a boilermaker. His mum, Mabel Boxley, was from Cardiff, Wales, and she moved with her parents when she was young. Roger went to Bankstown Central School and then Homebush Boys High School. Then in January 1958, he started working for the New South Wales Police Cadet Services just pretty much immediately after his 17th birthday. But he did lead a double life. Not only did he put criminals behind bars, but he became one of them. His first experience of an unaliving happened in 1976 in New South Wales town of Avocado Beach, and there goes a Harley. It was there he and other officers pelleted gunfire on a house holding murderer Philip Western. It was impossible to know who fired the fatal shot, but Rogerson said it was him. He later joked that the only way to identify Philip Western was by his ingrown toenails. Rogerson and his fellow cops also shot Sydney bank robber Butchie Burns in his getaway car. There was no doubt this time that the deadly shot was fired by Roger. He said that Burns fell out of the car dead as a doornail. Rogerson worked on some of the largest cases in the 70s that included the Toe Cutter Gang murder and the Whiskey A Go-Go fire in Brisbane. By 1978, his reputation was good enough to get convictions based on the weight of unsigned records of interviews with prisoners. He was also brought in to investigate the Ananda Marga conspiracy case, even though he had no connections to the special branch investigating the case. Tim Anderson is one of the 3 released in 1985. Tim said that the confession to Rogerson was lies, and that he and 2 other members of the Ananda Marga group were also convicted because of Roger Rogerson's lies. The Peter Mitchell Award that was given to Roger in 1980 for the arrest of armed robber Gary Purdy. This is when the stain of Gary Purdy's claims that Roger beat him and didn't allow him to call his lawyer. As he progressed, so did his relationship with criminals. One of them was Arthur Neddy Smith, a seasoned drug dealer. He was rapist and an unaliver. Smith became one of Roger Rogerson's most reliable informants, feeding him information from the streets in exchange for a softer touch when it came to his own, actions. It was Smith who organized Roger's meeting with Warren Lanfranchi. Roger Rogerson was also responsible for the 1981 shooting, unaliving of Warren Lanfranchi in a Chippendale lane in the inner city of Sydney. During his inquest, the coroner said that Roger Rogerson was acting in the line of duty, but a jury did not agree with that. They believed that it was not self-defense. But Warren Lanfranchi's girlfriend, Sally Ann Huckstep, who I have done a video on my other channel. It's Frankyrose's Crime Updates. Check it out. So then later, Nettie Smith that Roger had unalived Warren Lanfranchi as a payback for robbing another heroin dealer who was under police protection. Sally Ann was a heroin addict, a prostitute, but she went on many TV shows, including 60 Minutes and Current Affairs. She was demanding an investigation into the shooting of Warren Lanfranchi. Sally Ann also made statements to the New South Wales Internal Affairs Branch. So Warren Lanfranchi was unarmed and carrying about 10,000 Australian dollars, but that money was never found. Sally Ann Huckstep said he was, she was actually found unalived her own self about 5 years later. She was found in a pond in Centennial Park in New South Wales. So that is a relatively interesting thing to look into, because it does sound like she was totally set up. She ran out her door when a call came in, said she'd be right back. And it sounds like maybe it was her dealer that had been calling her so that Nettie Smith had access to her. So Nettie Smith was charged with her murder in 1996 after allegedly being taped, confessing to it in prison. He was acquitted, though, in 1999. No one was ever convicted of her murder. Roger Rogerson has said about Warren Lanfranchi, "I regret it. Of course I do. I regret being put in a situation where a man's life was taken. I believe I acted in good faith, and that if I had not shot him, he would have shot me. But, thing being, Lanfranchi did not have a gun on him." Roger Rogerson testified that shortly after the two met, by arrangement in Beaumont Street, Chippendale, and walked into the laneway, Lanfranchi realized Roger was not alone and that he was about to be arrested. Warren Lanfranchi pulled a gun on the cop. Roger Rogerson drew his service revolver, fired 2 shots, and when Roger Rogerson was asked about the allegation that he is involved in corrupt heroin dealing and skimming the proceeds of armed robberies and how he owns 3 blocks of flats, all he had to say was these allegations are completely untrue. So there is another Sydney working girl, Lynn Woodward, 24 years old. She later vanished within hours of giving evidence in a case. It was reported that police investigated the claim that Lynn Woodward was unalived and buried in sand hills behind a beach south of Sydney. The coronial file and findings into her disappearance are now missing. Go figure. Go figure. Transcripts of recordings have emerged where Lynn Woodward reportedly made her lawyers ahead of the inquest. So there is a transcript. That's good. That's good. I'll have to look for that. They alleged Roger Rogerson was a heroin dealer who gave Miss Woodward drugs so she would give evidence supporting his version of Warren Lanfranchi's murder. According to the transcripts, Miss Woodward was to testify that Lanfranchi did not have a gun at the time he was unalived, which was contradicting Roger Rogerson's testimony. There is also 2 women that heard these shots, and Roger Rogerson said that it was boom, boom. Well, it sounds like there was one shot, a couple seconds, and then the headshot. 35 years on, her brother, Scott, has now spoken about his sister's plight to reveal Roger Rogerson's corruption, which ultimately ended her life. The ex-cop had a reputation of bragging about his numerous unalivings. Warren Lanfranchi had been his third, which he claimed was in self-defense. The transcripts also allege some members of the armed hold-up squad worked with bank robbers and took a cut of the profits. She was not afraid, said her brother. Lynn had it all. She was attractive, articulate, intelligent, but very determined. Lynn went to give evidence because she wanted to see justice done. She had nothing to gain by talking. Roger Rogerson is also known for his association with other New South Wales detectives who are reputed to have been corrupt as well, including Ray Gunner Kelly, Fred Craw, and with many organized crime figures, including, like we were saying, Arthur Nettie Smith, which is a psychopath and a story all on his own, Graham John Abbo, Henry Warren, Robert Arthur Bobby Chapman, the Patty O'Haran, John Tex Moran, and Christopher Dale Flannery. Fellow police officer Michael Drury said that Roger Rogerson was involved in his attempted murder. Roger Drury said that he refused to accept a bribe by Roger Rogerson, offered in exchange for evidence tampering in a heroin trafficking trial of convicted Melbourne drug dealer Ellen Williams. On June 6, 1984, Michael Drury was shot twice through his kitchen window as he was feeding his 3-year-old daughter. Roger Rogerson was charged with the shooting, and Williams testified that Rogerson and Christopher Dale Flannery had agreed to unalive Drury for $50,000 each. But on the 20th of November, 1989, Roger Rogerson was acquitted. For a whole decade, Roger Rogerson was known as Roger the Dodger. An experienced and respected former New South Wales detective was asked about Roger Rogerson's reputation before his fall from grace. He said, Roger at his peak, from a police perspective, was academically sound, intellectually sound, an excellent leader, and physically courageous. Whoa. He was, in my view, the most outstanding detective of his day. In his long period on homicide investigations, I would say that he and his partner, the late Detective Superintendent Noel Morey, were the most successful investigators of their time, with an incredibly high clear-up rate. Roger Rogerson finally got a criminal conviction, but it was overturned on appeal. This was for the involvement in drug dealing, and allegedly conspiring with Melbourne drug dealer Dennis Allen to supply heroin. Now, Dennis Allen, again, another very large story. Roger Rogerson was let go from the New South Wales Police Force on April 11th, 1986, but he had not been seen active since his suspension on November 30th, 1984. This was a result of the investigation into Michael Drury's shooting. He was then convicted of perverting the course of justice in relation to $110,000 deposited by him in bank accounts under false names. He spent 9 months in jail in 1990 before being released on bail pending an ultimately unsuccessful appeal. After his release, he leveraged his infamy, if you want to say it, to conduct a series of public speaking engagements. Along with that, he was working with notorious criminal Mark Chopper Reed, who I've also done on my other channel, and former high-profile Australian rules football players Mark Jackson and Warwick Capper. This included auctioning signed photos of himself and standing near Warrenland Frenchie's deceased body. He spent a further 3 years in jail. Roger Rogerson has been basically had a depiction by Roger Ruxenbo in the miniseries Blue Murder. I do recommend you watch that one and the original Blue Murder that Roger Rogerson is speaking himself. There was a sequel in 2017, which I've never seen, Blue Murder Killer Cop. After leaving the force, Roger Rogerson started a company that made doors, gas meters, protectors, handrails, and security grills. There was also scaffolding work and some debt collecting. He knew hundreds of people from all walks of life and could be called on to make introductions. He was also an entertainer, as we were talking, sharing his policing stories on a show called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. On February 17th, 2005, Roger was convicted of lying along with his wife, Anne Mullico, in 1999 to Police Integrity Commission. Roger Rogerson served 12 months of a maximum 2.5-year sentence. His wife was released from Kirkconnell Correctional Center on February 17th, 2006. His wife was also sentenced to 2 years of off and on detention. On May 27th, 2014, Roger Rogerson was questioned on the murder of Sydney student Jamie Gow, who was 20 years old after a drug deal gone wrong. On January 21st, 2015, he and Glenn McNamara were to stand trial over his unaliving. On March 6, 2015, both were arraigned at the hearing in the New South Wales Supreme Court, both pleading not guilty, and also not guilty to supplying 2.78 kilograms of ice, methamphetamine, I guess, 6.1 pounds. The men were due for trial in the Supreme Court July 20th, 2015. On the second day, the trial was stopped because of the potential prejudice caused after McNamara's then lawyer, Charles Waterstreet, said something about Roger Rogerson killing 2 or 3 people when he was on the police force. So, the new trial started on February 1st, 2016. Then on June 15th, 2016, both Roger and Glenn McNamara were found guilty of the unaliving of Jamie Gowes. On September 2nd, 2016, Justice Jeffrey Ballou did sentence Roger Rogerson and McNamara to life in prison, stating the joint criminal enterprise to which each offender was a party was extensive in its planning, brutal in its execution, and callous in its aftermath. They were found guilty after a 4-month trial that showed CCTV footage linking them to Gayo's death, whose body was found floating in a bag in an ocean just off of Sydney. They had dumped his body in the sea after unaliving him using McNamara's boat. McNamara told the trial Rogerson shot the student dead as he was seething with anger over the exchange of drugs and cash. Neither Roger Rogerson or McNamara formally lodged appeals at that time, but Roger Rogerson did try and lodge an appeal in 2020. In 1999, Roger Rogerson was convicted of perverting the course of justice and lying to the Police Integrity Commission. Roger Rogerson is also known for his association with other detectives who have also been said to be corrupt. So we did go through those names: Nettie Smith, Abe Safran, Christopher Dale. Basically, Dale Flannery. Nettie Smith did say that he was basically given the green light to commit crimes in New South Wales. So Dale Flannery was known as Mr. Rent-A-Kill. He also ended up disappearing. At the inquest into Flannery's suspected murder, Coroner Greg Glass said that he suspected Roger Rogerson had unalived him. If he did not, he said he at least knew who did. According to Roger Rogerson, he first came across Nettie Smith after he and another career criminal, Bobby Chapman, attempted a payroll robbery at Fielder's Bakery in Granville in 1976 at one point. Bobby Chapman and Nettie Smith had been in a boys' home together, so they both served fairly long sentences for RAPE. Soon after that, the Whiskey A Go-Go nightclub fire on March 8, 1973. Sydney Detective Roger Rogerson, Detective Noel Morey were called to Brisbane to assist in an investigation. This was because John Andrew Stewart, accused of lighting the fire, had said criminals from Sydney were behind the nightclub extortion attempts. Roger Rogerson admitted he was probably the only cop in living memory that has killed 3 men. And he said he has no regrets. You might say that sounds horrible, but don't forget. I mean, I was at the armed hold-up squad for 10 years, and we were out every day. We carried shotguns in the boot of our car. We were out every day dealing with armed, violent men. This was our job. When you're dealing with vicious, violent men, it's going to happen. That they are going to fire at you, and you're going to fire back at them. They're going to be resisting arrest. It's part of our job, and we liked what we were doing. When asked how he would like to be remembered, he said, well, I'd like to think I'd be remembered for all the good things I did, and I think I did plenty. So there was no big hurrah when Roger Rogerson learned of the death of Nettie Smith. And they were longtime partners, and they ended up pretty intense enemies. He published an autobiography about his time as a detective. The 160,000 word manuscript was reviewed by an editor to cut out some of the bullshit and make it a good read. At the time, Rogerson said, "We haven't thought of a name for it, but it'll have Roger Rogerson right across the front of it." So the book is called The Dark Side. It consists of accounts of a less controversial murder investigation and other arrests he was involved in. And it sounds like murder investigations. I've never read the book. He also talks about his family, his childhood, other police officers, charges made against him at his trial. It is a combination mini autobiography and accounts of memoirs, opinions, anecdotes, and a little bit of humor. So Roger Rogerson is now 80 and was in Long Bay's Aged and Frail when he was told about Nettie Smith dying in a prison hospital. So that is the story of crooked cop Roger Rogerson. I believe he's still hanging in there. I haven't seen anything where he's passed away. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he went down with his criminal partners and will die in prison, as he should. His reign of terror lasted decades, and thanks to a couple of women who worked as ladies of the night, I guess, that eventually helped incarcerate him. And him and his criminal career ended with a life sentence. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you don't mind on your way out, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you have to say about Roger Rogerson. I know there's a lot more out on Roger, but honestly, we would be here for days. So I might later touch on him again, but I will definitely be talking about some of the people he worked with, because whether they were criminal or law enforcement, there was a lot of really shady shit happening. So for now, friends, once again, thanks for being here with me. Welcome to my new channel. Can you please share it out for me? And, pass out the information on Roger Rogerson. It's a little bit of a break from some of the deep stuff we deal with on the other channel. So I hope you enjoyed it. So I appreciate you. If you don't mind, hit that like, subscribe, and share. It's a great way to support my new channel for free. So once again, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.